All right. This concept of text notes. First of all, how many people here have ever read like an entire page of a textbook, looked up, and realized that they don't remember anything? Yeah, it's happened to everybody, right? And you got to go back and read it again and again. I've done that with entire chapters. And what I tried to look at when I was at UCLA and think back on is like, how did successful people deal with their textbook? If you go and take the textbook of a student who did well in college, what does it look like? Okay, sure. Why is it a mess, Alan? Okay, because they wrote on it, right? They highlighted it. They underlined things. They said, look at this other page, that these things relate. Now, you can't do that in this class because your textbook has to last like 10 years. Okay, that's how long the last physics textbook lasted. So, what can we do to give you the ability to deal with it in the same way? Also, I'm pretty sure that if anybody reads a physics textbook, you're gonna fall asleep, all right? So how do I address this problem? I tried to create this system called text notes. First of all, the general format of text notes is pretty much like this. Thank you. What does that look like?
Cornell notes.
It looks like Cornell notes. But it's a little bit looser because you don't have to do like a summary at the end and a bunch of that stuff. The general format is that, and it must be there, right? I must be able to see the divider, like, 1/3, 2/3 notes and questions. Okay, that's the basic format. Also, anything you write in there, like, if you write a definition, the next definition, you skip at least 2 lines. Now remember, you can do this stuff digitally, right? If you wanted, you can make a Google Doc and whatever. So no trees need to be harmed in the making of this process. But there's actually a method for my madness. So if you don't have 2 lines in between each entry, then you will not get credit. If you do not have it in this basic Cornell format, you will not get credit, okay? Now, what do you do and how long should it take? How long does it take you to read an entire chapter of a science textbook? What do you think? Thoughts? 50 minutes? Half hour?
Depends on the reader.
Okay,
I
okay.
said 15 minutes.
Oh, 15.
Not 50 minutes.
Oh, I was like, wow, that's very careful. So 15. Wow, very good. Okay, so what I'm trying to do with this process is make your first exposure actually kind of like what Niall is saying, right? I want to make it quick and efficient so that you can see the material, be semi-familiar with it, but not be overwhelmed by it. So I want this to take no more than 10 minutes. Right? So when you do this, it's no more than 10 minutes because all you're doing is writing formulae, right? You're writing definitions, and maybe you're noting graphs and diagrams, and asking any questions that you want to ask. Okay, but let's first address the most annoying thing I've ever seen on notes, okay? If you write a definition like velocity is the time rate of change of position in a given direction, what is the number one question that people want to connect with that definition? What is velocity? I hate that. If you do that, no credit. That's super annoying. Don't do that. Obviously, velocity is what the definition just said. Now, of course, you could put, I really don't know, what does this definition even mean, right? That's a different question. The other question is you doing busy work wasting your time and ink and my time. And I want to do that. Okay? I want your questions to be things that you really need to know, want to know. So when you put questions, I really don't want to have to be like, all right, you have to have 3 Costa's level 2 or Costa's level 3 questions, and then we have to go through a thing about how to do that. No, I just want real questions, right? And real questions could be, this chapter talks about quantum something. Is that just like the quantum something in chemistry? That's a reasonable question. Like, is this the same thing that happens in Star Wars? Those are fine, right? Because questions like that connect your life and your brain to the material, okay? And of course, but they're all on the left side, all right? So no more than 10 minutes, write these things that I've identified right here, and then what happens is you bring that to class, and when we have a discussion about this material, okay, then you take notes on your notes. You take notes on your notes. Why do I make you do that? Okay, one very important thing is because what do you use to study for the test? Yeah, your notes. You're going to use your notes, right? At least I hope so, right? Now, when you take notes, do your notes end up sort of just looking like pages of writing, right? Maybe they're in outline form, maybe they're in bullet form, but they're sort of just tons of writing. So how do you know what's more important than something else? Maybe you had the presence of mind to put a star, maybe you highlighted something. But when you think about everything in a chapter, how do you know what your teacher thinks is important? How are they going to show you what they think is important?
Talk about it in class.
They're going to talk about it in class. If you have text notes, if you have this skeleton that has every topic in the text, but your teacher only talks about certain ones, do you see what your teacher has just told you? They've told you to study that stuff. You don't have to spend all your time trying to memorize everything. Just focus on the things that they talked about because that's what's going to be on the test. Does that make sense? That's one of the most difficult things to learn in college, is to be able to read a professor and know what he or she thinks is important. This technique lets you do that. Every single student that I've ever had who actually tried this in college said it was helpful, said it helped them a lot, right? So then, of course, the thing that makes this really kick into gear is when you actually start writing questions. So during lecture, well, I don't like to lecture, but during the discussion, if a question pops up, write it down and ask it. Get an answer, write that answer down, okay? That process, this whole process is called text notes. And then, of course, at the end of this, always, I make you do a graphic organizer, where you try to take all that stuff that you did up there and put it into some order that gives you a picture of the whole topic, the whole chapter. Yes?
Are you still going to do word wars?
Yeah, we still do that. Except it's different because chemistry was just like definition wars. But yeah. Okay, any questions about this? And so then, when this is graded, what am I looking for? Number 1, format. Cornell, skip 2 lines. And then secondly, do you have a sufficient amount of material? Because everything's, obviously you can try to cut corners and it gets silly. And then at the very end, do you have a graphic organizer? Do you have questions? So once again, what is going to be important? Your basic format, right? Skipping 2 lines. Do you have the right amount of information? Did you put questions